Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I'm back with another stepped up emergency card video. This is for kit 23, which is Valentines and Galentines. We have 2 pages of circle sentiments and then these are new. They're the rectangle sentiments. I'll link to the video showing you how to cut those. And then we have Valentines for kids. So there's 4 different sentiments. You can get them in circles and rectangles, and then you can also get them with little graphics on them for really, really quick and easy treat holders and mini Valentines. I'll link to a video for that as well. There were 3 videos for this kit. Then that first page of sentiments, we also have in 4 different fonts of strip sentiments. And then finally, today we are going to step up this card sketch. You'll find all of the measurements on the front. And in case you missed it, there was a video for these 2 treat holders and then 4 more that will be linked below. My printables are completely free for subscribers. So if you find this content helpful and you would like the free download, please hit that subscribe button and we'll go ahead and get started. For this first card, we're making a spanner card and I'm using the tiny donut dippers from Trinity stamps along with the mini heart swirl. And I've already cut out all those pieces. Then I have the nested flag banners from scrapbook.com to cut out my little banner because I'm not good at it. You guys, I'm just not very good at it. I'm a little picky, a little type A, and it's never quite perfect. So this saves me that stress, but certainly you could cut the flag by hand. I am layering up 2 of the shadow dies for the heart swirl because my top one's a 65-pound white shimmer cardstock. And for the spanner, this is going to go across the middle of the card without being glued down to the middle. It's only going to attach on those 2 side pieces. So I want to make it nice and sturdy. And then I cut the red pieces out of some red glossy cardstock from Trinity stamps. And it's so pretty. You can see it shining there. I didn't have a pink glossy cardstock. So you know what I did? Here's my little redneck trick. I just covered it in some packing tape before I ran it through my die cut machine. Now, it's not the same kind of glossy, but it's still really pretty. I had completely forgotten about that trick. My original Stampin' Up! Dealer, Penny Keener, who I'm still friends with, taught me that 15 years ago. So try it out, it's super fun. I am adding frosting onto my little tiny donuts, and then I will use my little snips to cut out the inside of that frosting on the donut so it's not just hanging out there. Super easy. This is an old background stamp from Simon Says Stamp called Falling Snow. But I've rotated it upside down just to create this sort of confetti party pattern on my 3 pieces. I cut these out according to the sketch. There's the 2 pink pieces on the side and the pink piece in the center. And I laid them onto my sticky mat. There's like an A2 grid there. And so I kind of put them in the grid the way they'll go on the card. I stamped it a couple of times. And then I will glue these onto those purple matte layers that are also on the card sketch. I haven't changed anything about the measurements here. I'm just following along with the sketch. I like my wet glue for this. It just gives me a little bit of wiggle room, helps me line everything up. I start at the top. For me, my eye is drawn toward the top of the card before the bottom, so I'm more concerned about those 3 margins than I am about the bottom margin. This is a card where we are going to cut those sections into the base of our card. So I'm starting with a standard A2 card, so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to cut 2 slits into the front. I want to make sure they're really going to match my pieces, so I'm just lining them up on the card front and tracing it with my pencil. This also helps me when I bring it to my trimmer. I like this Fiskars Sure Cut. It has a little wire inside that shows me exactly where my blade is going to go. If you don't have that, just line it up with where your blade will cut. So in the groove on a sliding cutter or with the edge of your guillotine. And I'm just cutting up to that center score line. So once I do this, I will have 3 different flaps on the front of my card. When I go to adhere this first piece, I'm going to start on the left and I need to make sure it's perfectly aligned on the top and on the inside. I can trim things off of the left, I can trim them off of the bottom and even things out if I need to, but it looks a little wonky when you start trimming on the inside and you can't cut the fold. So when I move on to the second one, again, I'm going to try to line this up on the top, but it should fit perfectly because I used those to trace the lines for my trimmer. And here's the last one. Now again, I have those 3 flaps and I can create a really easy fun fold card. In the original sketch, there are some diagonal stripes that go across that center panel, but I'm going to skip that and I'm going to use this heart instead. and I'm going to let that span from one short flap to the other. I've aligned it on the card where I want it, and then I've just used some mint tape. It's like Post-it tape from scrapbook.com to mark where the section ends. So when I add my glue, I know how far I can go. There isn't a ton of cardstock attaching those two pieces. So I'm a little bit generous with my glue, and then I just gave it some time to make sure it was dry enough that if I start moving things around on the card, I'm not going to accidentally bump it loose. For my donuts, I put the first one down with wet glue, but the second one overlaps it a little bit. So I've used some 1mm small thin foam squares from Spellbinders, and I've put those where it doesn't overlap the other donut just to kind of even things out so it doesn't look like it's tilted. And then I will add my little banner up at the top and trim off the extra. It doesn't perfectly match the sketch, but it's close enough for me. This is the Be Mine stamp set from Pixie Dust, and I'm just going to use this teeny tiny little I love you. There's a heart in the middle of the U. I think it's super cute, and it's small enough that it fits behind my heart. So while the card is closed, I've lined it up on top of the heart, so I know that when I stamp it, it will fit perfectly behind it. And then I will lift the flap, right, the little spanner pieces, and I will stamp this down a couple of times using a black ink. Then I'm using this stamp set from Trinity Stamps that goes along with their donut shape card, you guys. Donuts from Trinity right now, they're so good. I've got a video coming out next week, I want to say, making a double slider card using the large donut shape card die. So good. And I have grabbed one that says there's a whole lot to love about you, HOL. I can't. The puns. I love a good pun, and this release from Trinity is just teaming with them. Full disclosure, I'm on the Trinity Stamps design team. They sent me these, but I was not obligated to put them in this video. So here's our spanner card. It lifts up on the sides first, and then the middle. We get the double sentiment. I hope you will give this a try. It's really simple. This one is going to take that same idea, but we're going to make the center panel of the card pop up like an easel. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I went a little nuts for Black Friday. Like, there were links to all of the different sales I shopped. And so now I'm on a mission to use all these amazing supplies that I purchased for Black Friday. And this is one of my favorites. It's from Altenew, and it's called the Pristine Peonies. These blooms are huge. So I stamped the one that has 2 blooms in it in a blue ink. I want my flowers to be purple with a hint of teal in parts of it. And I am just impatient. When I stamp with black ink, I never give it enough time to dry. And then I feel like the black bleeds into my flowers a little bit. And I don't like that. So if I stamp it in blue or something that coordinates and mixes well with the colors I'm gonna blend, I don't have to worry about that. So I blended these flowers, but there's 3 other pieces on this stencil that need to be colored in. And what I love is that there's no rotating. Even though I'm gonna do some leaves and then I'm gonna do some centers of flowers, Altenew designed it so that you just shift the stencil. You're not twisting and turning and trying to figure out where everything goes. I should also mention that I left that stamp in my MISTI. I do want the outline on this stamp. And so I will just put it back in when I'm all done and stamp it in black. I'm using these inks from Simon Says Stamp, and there's a big leap between the lightest and the mid-tone. So I'm coming in and tapping off my brush on the lid of my ink and then going very light-handed over the top of that. Although now that I'm thinking about it, what I should have done was just grab my Spellbinders blending brush. The new ones that I've been raving about are the same size, but it's a much softer bristle, so it's a lot easier to go light-handed. When I get to the 3rd layer of the flowers, I get a little too heavy-handed, but I'll show you how we fix that too. So I'm also blending in a detail layer on these leaves. For each layer of leaves, I did a little bit of light blending and then some darker blending as well, just to give it more depth and dimension. Because I went heavy-handed on that last layer, I put the first stencil back on there, and I'm just going back over it all one more time with my lightest ink and a bit of a heavier hand. And it will move some of the ink that we laid down on the layers. It softens those stark lines and then darkens up the lightest areas. And so then I was super happy with it. I tucked this back in the corner of my MISTI, and I'm going to use that same black ink from the sentiments on the last card, and I'm going to stamp the whole thing twice. And to me, that just makes those blooms pop. I love it. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out with the coordinating die. This thing nearly fills my entire A2 card, and so we're going to make a really fun effect here. For some added interest, I'm using the Concord & Ninth Quilted Card Front die, and I've cut this piece of white shimmer cardstock to 3 3/4 by 5.5 inches. And so it's got a little shimmer, a little texture, and I just think it's beautiful. I'm going to add this with some wet glue onto my 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel. I am deviating a little bit from the card sketch here. Instead of having the pink layer be fully confined within those purple matte layers, I just have one background piece, and then we'll cut this at 1.5 inches and 3 inches and 1.5 inches. And so then it matches up with the purple panels on my card. Like before, I'm tracing with my pencil just to make sure I'm going to cut these pieces apart in the right place. And then here are my 3 flaps. I'm going to take the center flap and extend it, and I am going to score at 2 1/8. It's right in the center of that panel, and this is going to create the easel on the front of our card, right? So I'm just folding that in half towards the inside of the card, and then I can start assembling everything. Now, make sure your panels are in the right order. I didn't do that the first time, which is why I'm triple checking here, but you can see I had to pull this first one off because they didn't line up and it was really bugging me. I'm using my wet glue, so I have a little bit of wiggle time, and I'll line it up at the top and on that inside edge. I do end up trimming some pieces off on this one. I think because I was getting frustrated. I wasn't being as patient as I should have been to get everything aligned perfectly, but that's fine. On this center panel, you are only adding glue to the bottom, only the bottom, or you will not have an easel, right? But if we do the bottom, then you can still fold that section in half and that whole panel will pop up. And then I will glue that last piece on to the right flap, and you can see I'm kind of pointing at the edge. There was some cardstock hanging out off camera. I will just take that to my trimmer and clean that up a little bit. It wasn't much, it's not hard, and that creates a fun fold effect. Now you could leave those side panels so that they move, but I'm actually going to glue mine down. The only part of the card that will open is the center panel. I just think it's a little bit cleaner when you're all done with it. This step is totally optional, but I cut an extra die cut from 120-pound cardstock for my florals, and I'm just going to layer that up so that it's extra sturdy. Do you need to do that? I don't think so, but the back of my flowers had some ink on it anyway, so I was like, let's just go ahead and do it. I've used a little bit of mint tape just to hold that flap down while I try to get everything aligned. I put my flowers where I want them, and then I'm going to lay my clear sticky mat on top of it, and then some mint tape on top of that right along where it splits or where that center panel ends. That way, when I go to add my glue to the back of this, I know not to extend beyond the tape on the left and the right, but I want to be fairly generous with my glue just to make sure it's on there well. This whole thing is going to be sticking up in the air. Then I can remove my mat and I know it's perfectly placed. For the sentiment on this one, I'm going to grab just a simple happy birthday strip sentiment that's from the previous kit at the beginning of January. I will link to that one as well. I'll take it to my trimmer and use the tick marks to trim out this little 1/4 inch strip, and then I'll use the inside edge of the finger guard to make sure that my margins match on the left and right. I'm going to add that onto a 3/8 strip of black cardstock, just a teeny tiny border around that happy birthday. I think it really polishes it, and it's going to help it stand out on my florals. It's not going to cover up too much of that hard work, but it's a nice little sentiment. It's going to make a super elegant card. Sort of. We're going to make it kind of snarky here in a minute, but I'll put my happy birthday just overlapping the leaves on the bottom right. Then on the inside, I want to make a little place that will help the card to stay propped open. This is the mini kit that came out in December, and it's a bunch of sub sentiments for birthdays. So I trimmed this out just like before, and I added it to another 3/8 inch strip of black cardstock. I'm layering it up 3 times just so it has a little dimension. You could use foam tape here, but that's more dimension than I want. Then I can add this to the inside of my card. This sentiment says, "May your birthday cake be moist." I had to. My channel is Sassy's LLC. You know I love it funny. But if you prefer sweet cards, there's also one in there that says wishing you a wonderful day, and it would also fit beautifully right here. I ended up putting this closer to the bottom than towards the top. That way I can write my message above that, and then it will still look really beautiful when you prop it open. That finishes up card number 2. Remember, if you don't have these supplies, you can use what you have to turn this sketch into an easel card using whatever your favorite supplies are. For this last card, we're going to get a little nuts. This is the Mosaic Coverplate from Scrapbook.com, the Celebration Squad from Concord and 9th, the Pretty Pink Posh Sentiment Strips, then a BAM box, that's our pop-up feature from Karen Burniston, and my most used sentiment die, it's the Happy Birthday from Avery. I'll link everything below, but again, use what you have. I have covered a 4 by 5.5 inch piece of pale blue cardstock and some double-sided adhesive roll from Scrapbook.com. We're not using this for a pop-up or anything. It's just for texture. And so I love that roll. I think it's really affordable and a great way to turn this into a sticker. I didn't want to have to take my glue bottle to all those little bits and pieces. Then I was able to trim that down following the card sketch for the pink rectangles. Okay, so this is 2 3/4 by 4 inches, and I'm going to add that onto some pattern paper, and then these other pieces are 1 inch by 4 inches. I have been really careful as I laid these out on my desk to make sure that all the patterns are continuous. Do you have to do that? No. Is anyone going to notice? Not anyone I'm giving a card to. But I notice, and it matters to me. So if it matters to you, keep an eye on it. Otherwise, just wing it. It'll be fine. So there are my 3 pieces. And I am going to put my little stripes onto my card. I made another card using these Celebration Squad girls before, and I turned it in for my craft roulette card, but I forgot to put these little stripes on there. I just forgot, you know. I have an entire bin of scraps of cardstock that I've turned into these little strips. I think it's a great way to use up your scraps that otherwise feel like they're too small for anything. I just use a Slimline die set from Scrapbook.com. Again, everything's linked below. But you could skip that if you wanted to. So here's my naked girl, and I just colored her in with my Ohuhu art markers because I didn't have like a skin color that I liked. I was trying to make a girl that looks like all the women in my family. They go very, very gray. Actually, they go white. They go a little gray first, and then they go white, and they do it young. Mine started about 3 years ago. I give myself another 5 years and I'll probably be there too. So imagine this is my future ponytail. And I'm just going to cover her up with her shirt. There are 2 separate arms you can add onto her, and then there's a bunch of different things that she can hold. There's like a champagne glass, a present, a balloon, all kinds of stuff. And then I just use my alcohol markers and a regular old pencil to add in some shading, some darker spots in her white hair. And then I'll add this little ribbon kind of where the scrunchie would be or the hair tie or whatever. This video is already really long. If you're still with me, thank you. So I just assembled the present off camera, and I'll add a little bit of foam behind it and put that in the palm of her hand like she's holding that up. If I was going to do this again, I would scoot her slightly farther to the left. Because my sentiment is going to end up further in the corner than I want. But it still works out, and I'm very happy with this card. I wanted a little ink blending on this happy birthday, so I'm just using my mini stencil mat and some pink ink to create that ombre look. Then I have this piece that's 4 by 2 1/4. I'm just creating a mat for my happy birthday, and I'm going to add it onto this other piece that's 4 1/4 by 2 1/2. Once those are adhered, I can add glue to the back of my happy birthday and add that on there as well. I love that these letters are pretty chunky, and so I don't have to think real hard or be really careful when I'm adding glue to the back of it. I still can wiggle it around a little bit. Like, it's just super user-friendly. Okay, this is a BAM box. This is a pop-up mechanism from Karen Burniston, and it's so amazing. I cut one out using the die. There are 2 dies that cut matching BAM boxes, and then everything is a mountain fold except the one where I put the pencil line, and it's the 2 largest sections, right? And they're between 2 sets of punched out holes. So all of them are mountains except that one little section, and I am going to glue those 2 large sections together. Then Then these are number 8 firm stretch rubber bands, and I will link them below. I got mine from Karen Burniston. And we are going to assemble this box. See, it folds up like a box. We're going to assemble it with the rubber band on the inside so that it will continue to pop open. You could also use the number 12 softest stretch and just double it up if you already have some from her other pop-ups. I'm going to begin by adding that rubber band to that center section, that little flap we glued together, okay? So it's just hanging out there. It pops right into the holes. Then I will tuck that piece we glued underneath the smile of the smiley face. See that? And I will lift the rubber band up and over the smile and pop it right into the eye holes. That sounds really weird, but it looks like a little face. Okay, so there it is. It's connected into those little holes. I went over the smile, and that is going to create our pop-up. Then I will put that smile right back into the rectangle it popped out of, and I'll add glue all over it. And I will wrap the box around and glue the other flap on top of it. So it just looks like a box with a little diagonal piece. Once I get everything in place, I will press it and make sure that glue is really well adhered. But do you see the pop on that thing? I press down and it is very firmly pressing back against me. So here I pressed it closed and I put pencil lines at the top of both sides. Okay, so those are back to back. And I'm going to add glue to both of them. Then, while I have it pressed closed, I'm just putting it in my right hand, press it closed, and I'm going to tuck it right into the center of the card and press it flat. And then I'll hold it for a minute. I want to give that time for the glue to adhere, but you see this thing pop open? Now here's the thing. I'm putting a lot of heavy stuff on the front of this card. So if I had it to do again, I would use 2 band boxes instead of 1, but it still works and I'm still happy with it. Then I'm going to add glue onto the front of the box and I will add the happy birthday onto it. So I only put glue on one side. Then I will press everything closed to make sure that it opens and closes like it's supposed to. If you aren't interested in band boxes, you can still make a pop-up card that just doesn't have that spring in it. I will link to a video where I show you how to add a box into a card that doesn't have the rubber band that will still let that happy birthday pop up. Okay, because it pops up, I'm adding magnets. If I had it to do again, I don't know if I would do this part, but I wanted to show you the option. Honestly, it's kind of fun when you pull it out of the envelope and it pops up on its own. This will keep it from doing that though. So I have these little magnets from Total Element and I've placed them onto a 3 by 4 1/4 inch piece of white cardstock. On the back, I need more magnets and I'm going to use that little strip sentiment to do that. And so I was using that to figure out my placement. Okay. But I have 2 pieces of 120-pound cardstock and I have just cut out holes with a standard hole punch that go through both layers. If I do it this way, the magnets will be flush and nothing is going to be kind of lumpy and bumpy in my card. I'm adding glue all over this and I will add it right behind my panel with my girl on it. It's the exact same size. Okay, so here we are. This is now 3 pieces of cardstock thick, then plus all the decoration on top. I am just going to wiggle and jiggle these little magnets until they pop in there. I'm going to turn it sideways. See how it doesn't raise up at all beyond that cardstock? Then I've put a little bit of tape over the top of it. I'm using micropore tape. It's a paper tape, but you could use any tape here as long as it's pretty strong. Otherwise, my magnets try to pop out and connect to each other while I'm putting the card together and it drives me nuts. I'm going to start assembling my card now. Notice I didn't cut slices through the front of the card on this one. That's not what we're doing. We are just making this pop up. So I've added glue to the first one and then here to the second one, and I'm going to butt it right up against the other one. In theory, I didn't need to cut that dark teal patterned paper apart, but visually it helped me to align everything as I was assembling the card. So I'm pretty happy with that choice. Then I will add this last one on there with wet glue, and you can see I have a little bit of white cardstock peeking out on the side. That's okay. I will just trim that off. I can't remember, with my trimmer, with my scissors, whatever I was feeling brave enough to do at this point in the card assembly process. Then this is the back of my card, and I'm bringing in that red sentiment strip die, and I just let the magnets connect to the ones that we added to the front of the card. And I'll go around them with my pencil, okay? And then I'm going to use my hole punch and I'll just punch those same holes out of this piece of red cardstock. The shirt and this piece of cardstock are the same red as the glossy cardstock we used for the donut glaze, which I love. The Pretty Pink Posh sentiment strips have 3 layers, which is why it works so well for this. So I added the second layer, which is just a stitched rectangle right on top of there. I just glued it on, and then I'm going to bring back my hole punch and punch through that layer as well. Now I can figure out where it goes on my card. Once again, I'm going to add my magnets, okay? I'm also making sure my magnets are going to attract each other and not repel each other when I go to finish this up. And I'm tracing around them with a pencil. I color them in because I think it's easier to see it when I go to glue things together, but you wouldn't have to, okay? So then I'll add glue to this and I'm gonna add it right over the top of those pencil circles that I drew on my card. That way I know my magnets are gonna line up perfectly. On this one, I am not adding tape because I don't want the tape to show underneath my strip sentiment, but you could if it helped you. You just got to be a little careful with it. I popped my magnets into place and then I'm coming right back to this sub-sentiments set. I am using this so much more than I thought I would. And I am using the third die or the third layer of this trio to cut out my sentiment. It fits perfectly. I also added some double-sided tape on the back of it just to make sure those magnets aren't going to come loose. I have 2 little boys, and are they going to put them in their mouths if they find them? Likely not, but I still think it's better to play it safe. So I always make sure mine are really well adhered in there. This sentiment, even though it's a birthday card, comes from the Valentine's set, and it says, "Who needs a man with a friend like you?" It is 1 1/4 by 2 1/4 inches, and then that dark teal piece is 1 1/2 by 2 1/2. I put just a little bit of foam on the right-hand side since I have those extra layers of cardstock in the center, and that will finish up this card. It lays flat, but then I can pull the magnets apart and this thing pops up. I love that. It would have more pop if the front weren't so heavy or if I had added a second band box, certainly an option. But you'll have to let me know which of these 3 cards is your favorite, which one you think you might try. If you're interested in the free printable, all I ask is that you subscribe to my channel. So if you hit that subscribe button, then you can go to the description box below the video, and at the bottom you'll find instructions for downloading that massive 12-page kit. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.